fearing the blackout could lead to a dangerous radiation leak. Here now is Brent Sadler, retired 26-year Navy veteran and former Pentagon Navy staff member. He's also the Heritage Foundation Senior Research Fellow. Brent, thank you for being with us. Let's just start here. How concerned are you about Chernobyl right now?
Not too concerned. A lot of the reporting has talked about a repeat of like a Fukushima kind of incident, which was a hydrogen explosion and release of large amount of radioactivity up into the atmosphere. The conditions for that just don't exist at Chernobyl. The 4 plants there, one of which was the site of the 1986 nuclear accident, that actually has been shut down since '86 and covered in a large protective shield. The other 3 plants haven't been operating for about 10 years. More concern is about 20,000 fuel rods. About 18,000 are in what's wet storage for dissipating any residual heat. Again, that is just enough, the water is enough to keep the heat down and to prevent any boiling of that water or release of radioactivity. Another 2,000 are in what's called dry storage. And really what's concerning is the loss of power, of monitoring, and the loss of custody control over those 20,000 fuel rods, more than a release of radioactivity in a nuclear reaction.
But if those spent fuel rods are not cooled, that's where you get the radiation leak. Is that correct? And I'm hearing there's only something like 48 hours worth of backup power or cooling there before you're sort of just left to chance. Is that where we get the radiation leak?
So there's a difference here. The power plant that was occupied earlier on this week over the weekend in the south of Ukraine, that was a functioning power plant. And while 4 of 6 reactors were shut down early in February, 2 had been operating at low power. Those, if they lost power, would actually cause a meltdown and a release of radioactivity. Again, that's in the south. Chernobyl's been shut down and defueled for many years. The real risk there is loss of custody of these highly radioactive fuel rods, spent fuel rods, less of an explosion or a meltdown.
So what happens, so if those spent fuel rods get out of control, if they're removed from where they are, if they're just not handled correctly, what then is the risk, Brent? What are we worried about with Chernobyl?
The odds are probably pretty low. I'm not as familiar with the design of these actual fuel rods, if they're in smaller segments or if they're in their full array, which could be quite large and very heavy. So it's not something that someone without a crane and a large truck isn't going to be able to get away from the site. So it's going to have to be a concerted effort to do that. And at the same time, these things are highly radioactive. So you have to be very close to them, within several meters for it to be lethal. But not something I'd want to be close to, and not something easily handled for sure.
Okay.
But that's where the risk is.
Okay, so you're less concerned about Chernobyl right now. Let's talk a little bit about another side of this, tactical nuclear weapons. We've been hearing that a lot lately, especially as Putin has been seemingly backed into a corner relative to what he hoped he would achieve. There's concern that this is something he would move to. Talk about the risk of Putin using those kind of weapons and what they would mean on the battlefield.
So Russia, much like Soviet military doctrine, and I got to stress also, the Chinese are trained in the same school of military thought, Soviet military thought, and that is tactical nuclear weapons are viewed not really like we view them as a strategic weapon, but more just like another artillery round for tactical use. Now, again, their employment would be in a situation where Putin sees a strategic loss unfolding in Ukraine. This could be the total collapse of his military in Ukraine. It could be something where more akin to an invasion of Russia, which is not on the cards on any scale. But that would be the situation where you could see the Russian army deploy a small tactical nuclear weapon. And these are smaller. Think about the weapon that was used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, big in World War II, but in what's out there today, small and very localized in its effect.
But it sounds like incredibly devastating with radiation problems. I mean, this whole situation is bathed in concerns about nuclear security, what Putin would do, how he would do it. Brent, we appreciate you breaking it down for us. Thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.